ladies and gentlemen. My name's Brendan McGrath. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Rural City of Wangaratta. Thanks everybody for coming along tonight. It's great to see a big crowd in the gallery. Thanks for taking the time to get along. Just to explain the order of proceedings for this evening, under the terms of our local law, on the day of the election of the mayor actually goes out of office at 6 o'clock that morning. So technically we're mayorless at the moment, which is why I'm chairing the start of the meeting rather than the mayor, as would be the norm. So I'll chair the first part of the meeting through until the end of the election of the mayor, and then I'll hand over to the mayor to take over proceedings from that point on. I should just alert you all that we will be recording tonight's meeting, as is the norm. I suspect we're probably not live streaming. I don't think the reception out here will quite cope with that. So just be aware that we are recording, and as a member of the gallery, you may be captured on that recording. I'll ask Councillor Clark to acknowledge traditional owners.
I wish to acknowledge the Mandarin people, the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and to the elders of any other communities who may be with us today.
Councillor Russell, could you do the opening prayer, please?
Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people whom we serve. Amen.
So all councillors are present. There are not any apologies. Are there any requests for leave of absences from any of the councillors? No. We don't have any citizenship ceremony. Can I have someone to move and second the minutes of the previous council meeting, please? Councillor Rees, Councillor Clark. All those in favour? It's carried. We have no petitions. There are no deputations. Councillor Clark, I think you might have a councillor's report, or Councillor Russell.
I have conflict of interest, Mr. Chair. On page 32 in the grants, there's been a grant to a football club that my son plays football for.
My apologies, I missed that. I'm a miserable failure as a chair. Are there any other conflicts of interest in any of the other items this evening? No. Thanks, Councillor Russell. Councillor reports.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This weekend just gone was the La Jolta Vita Festival in the King Valley. The festival attracts up to around 5,000 visitors from across Australia. 50% of our visitors are from Melbourne, 10% from Canberra. The La Dolce Vita Festival contributes 1.2 million in spending in our local businesses, accommodation, food, fuel, etc. The festival is recognised statewide as being one of the best celebrations of wine, food and family, and it puts the rural city of Wangaratta on the map as a tourist destination, with visitors being charmed by a beautiful landscape, authenticity of the tourist experience and the warm hospitality shown by our winemaking families. There was 9 wineries from the King Valley participated this year in 2019. King River Estate, Pizzini Wines, Darling Estate, La Cantina, King Valley, Del Zotto Wines, Brown Brothers, Polatini Wines, San Miranda, Symphonia Wines. The rural city of Wangaratta supported this event both financially and also had a pop-up information booth at San Miranda's Winery on Saturday morning, which was well attended. And the rural city of Wangaratta contributes $5,000 to support the marketing and promotion of this festival. And I have to say, having gone to 6 of the wineries, it's a pretty good festival. And the tickets were, I think, $25 for 2 days and have live music and some really good live music. That's pretty cheap. So in the future, it'd be really, really good for our community to let everybody know, all the friends across Australia, wherever they might be, this is a really, really great place to come. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Bussell. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chairman. As the portfolio holder or the person responsible for MAV, I attended the Municipal Association conference on the 13th of October at the Sofitel in Melbourne. Guest speakers included Amanda Sinclair, Professor from Melbourne University Business School, who spoke on gender and leadership, getting the numbers right in local government. From a low base of around 7% of women in 1979-80 in Victoria, 4 decades later in 2019, some 38% of councillors are women. 40% of Victorian mayors and 24% of deputy mayor roles in 2019 were held by women. 41% of Victorian councils have at least 40% of women, and 19 have a majority of women. No Victorian councils are without women. On the flip side, the majority of councillors are men over 46 years, with an increase in those over 76 and a decline in those under 25. 17% of councillors have only one woman representative, and only 20 of the 81 Victorian councils have women as CEOs, and this has not increased over the last decade. And lastly, while 60% of the local government workforce are women, only 34% are directors and 39% managers. I found the presentation on the local government from the outside quite uninteresting. John Baker, an Englishman, has been CEO for Morning Peninsula Shire for some 12 months, and Marina de Lorenzo from Melbourne Water were the presenters. Probably the best presentation for me was titled Growing Age-Friendly Communities, Why Not? By Christine Young from Melbourne City Council in Western Australia. How that council has gone about bringing the community together with support from local business and council office to give those with disabilities the opportunity to be accepted into their communities is just amazing. If councillors and staff would like to access her presentation, this can be arranged. The other one was of interest to us was the waste and recycling future directions. There were 3 speakers on this subject. Susie Sendises from the local government New South Wales, who spoke very passionately about the New South Wales Customer Deposits Scheme. David O'Loughlin is the President of the Australian Local Government Association, who spoke on waste and recycling from a national perspective, and Gail Sloan, the CEO of Waste Management and Resource Recovery Association. All 3 spoke on different aspects of our waste and recycling issues, and I must say I was extremely interested in their presentations. These 2 are available from the PAs. Contrary to some ratepayers considering it is a waste of resources to be a member of MAV, I found the conference to be of great value for the city. My second report is to do with the State Council meeting, MAV State Council meeting on the 18th of October. The consolidation of some of the motions, there were 48 motions debated by the delegates, some of which I would like to report on. The consolidated motion on climate emergency response was hotly debated and was eventually carried 68 for and 32 against. Frankston City had submitted a motion, Save Our Red Gums. After discussion, this was carried 51% and 49 against. From the discussion is the councils with the greatest growth who opposed this motion. Frankston City also submitted a motion to waive stamp duty for first home buyers. Surprisingly, this was lost 60 to 40. Swan Hill Rural Council submitted the motions to licence a labour hire scheme for 12 months. and to actively support the labour hire contracting industry. This was lost 55-45 when a division was called. This was again lost 54-46. All other motions were carried by the delegate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Are there any other councillor reports? No, we'll move on to item 12.1, which is an opportunity for Councillor Rees to make some remarks as the outgoing mayor.
Thank you, Brendan. Just a few notes that I'd like to read out in my outgoing speech. For the position I've held over the last 12 months. So I'd like to reflect on the previous year, and I will be seeking a second term as mayor if elected. I'll also be delivering another speech in about 5 minutes, so get used to the voice, hopefully. Fingers crossed. When I put my hand up to be mayor, I did so because I wanted to build on the excellent foundation laid by our previous mayor, Kim Clark, showing strong leadership and set an example for how council and our community transition from administrators to a democratically elected council. Over the past 3 years, our council has set about changing the perception of Wangaratta to a place that is welcoming and ready to face the challenges of the future ahead. We know that we need to grow as a community and if we are to be viable for the future, so that our children and their children don't feel like they have to leave and have the best opportunities right here for life and their futures. It gives me great pleasure that so many projects and initiatives started during our term and are now coming to fruition. A couple of months ago, we opened the Cruz Street extension in the Northwest Growth Corridor. This was a $7.4 million project that made the biggest single road project in Council's history. Just a month after that, we had the confirmation from the Planning Minister that he had approved the planning scheme amendment that opens up all of our land surrounding Cruz Street for massive residential development. This land, as well as 70 hectares in the south, is now shovel-ready for developers to make their subdivision applications to council, of which they are doing it. Just under 7,000 people will be able to call these areas home. What a great achievement to have kicked off in our council term. Our other major projects are the Organics Processing Plant and Aquatic Centre will likewise help our community to grow in the future. Our state is facing a recycling crisis, yet here in Wangaratta we will own and operate our own organic processing plant, turning food and garden waste into valuable compost. The plant is complete and council staff are now commissioning it, ahead of it taking waste early next year. We also are just a year away from opening up our $17 million aquatic centre, which will serve our local community and help attract visitors through major events and training. Harry, this is not about building a community, is it? It is about building a community. Thanks, Harry. We're also seeing significant private investment in Wangaratta. Quest Apartments is well underway and Dan Murphy's as well is ready for business come around Christmas time. In our rural areas, we are investing and empowering our communities through the Rural Placemaking Program. This program has so far delivered more than $700,000 in projects, which each community said were priorities. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for you, the community, and a few other thank yous I'd like to add in along the way. The first one is for the people in helping me carry out these duties. The first one, who's in the back of the room, thank you for coming, is my wife Marnie, my daughter Lexi, and my son Oliver. Being a mayor means a lot of trips to Melbourne and an average of 3 to 4 nights out a week to attend community events. So you can't do that without the support of my family, so thank you very much. I'd also like to thank my Deputy Mayor Mark Curry. I do hope that we can continue our partnership over the next year, see out this final council year coming forward. I've enjoyed your perspective, your support, your guidance and your belief in me and our council. Thanks, Mark. My fellow councillors, we often have differences in opinion, but we are united as a council, and that has been the strength, as Ken has said previously as the Mayor, in our term so far, is the strength that we are united. I'd also like to thank the brilliant staff of the rural city of Wangaratta, led by Brendan McGrath. We all know, and I say this in council regularly, that the fish rot from the head, and the fish is swimming very, very strong. I'd also like to thank our directors in such projects I mentioned before in the Aquatic Centre. Wouldn't have happened without Director Jamie Cho. I look at our road project there, the 7.4 biggest road project in council's history. Couldn't have done without Alan Clark. I look at Stephen Swart, our residential subdivision, and for the future growth of 7,000 people coming to our areas. Through Director there, Stephen Swart, this couldn't have been achieved. Council also has other managers that I work with closely, and I'd like to thank a big thank you out to the amazing work of Celeste, Ben, Marcus, Claire, Penny, Glenda, Juan, Anthony, and Jamie. Jamie Reeve is operates our field services office down there. A new appointment for Jamie. He's turned that whole area around down there at the yard. And the good work and the maintenance of Wangaratta wouldn't be done without these guys down there. And a big thank you to those guys. They always wave at me, send me cheery hellos, and it's great to be welcomed as the Mayor by fellow workers there with us. So ladies and gentlemen, for my days dealing in council, I received excellent service from the two ladies that I work very closely with, and they're up the back here at the moment, which is Jamie and Rebecca. Sorry, not Jamie. Sorry. Jamie, Jane, thank you, Jane, and thank you, Rebecca, and guidance along the way. I always get a helping hand when it comes to certain issues with marketing and my speeches, etc. That helps me out on terminology. I can't do it without Stephen Berg standing up the back there as well. So thanks, Steve. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll hand back over to Brendan. Thank you for your time and listening.
Thanks, Councillor Rees. Can I have a motion to receive the outgoing Mayor's speech? Councillor Clark and Councillor Curry. All those in favour? It's carried. Okay, moving on to mayoral elections. The first item is 12.2. Ordinarily, the councillors have a decision to make in terms of either selecting a 2-year or single-year term for the period for the Mayor. Given that we are entering the final year of this council's term, they only have the option of a 12-month term, so the recommendation tonight is that council determine the Mayor's term of office as being 1 year. Do we have a mover and seconder for that motion? Councillor Cody and Councillor Benson, all those in favour? It's carried. Moving on to the main event, the election of the Mayor. I call for nominations for the position of Mayor.
I'd like to nominate Dean Rees.
It's Councillor Curry. Councillor Rees, do you accept that nomination?
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations for the position of Mayor? Being no other nominations, I declare Councillor Rees elected Mayor for a 12-month term. And with that, I'll hand over.
Thanks, Brendan. Not a bad job. Again, thank you to my fellow councillors for showing me faith in the lead of this term, for the team to lead the team for our final year of our 4-year term. I've talked about some of the achievements so far, but I strongly believe this is going to be the best year ever for council and the community here in the rural city of Wangaratta. If you don't believe me, then here's a quick list of the events, just the events we are hosting this year over the next 12 months. The Wangaratta Marathon and Fun Run, which brings 3,000 people to our town. We've got the AFL pre-season match with Collingwood versus Richmond. We expect around 11,000 people to turn up. Just a couple of weeks later, we've got the Nitro Circus, penciling another 11,000 people to our town from all over Victoria. We have the Winter Festival, which will be back on track and be bigger and better than ever, and we estimate somewhere again between 4,000 and 8,000 people. And yes, we're going to continue to have the Yeti. There's a strong chance we'll have another crack at the Ovens and Murray Grand Final, so expect then another 8,000 people at that. And come again for November on the Melbourne Cup weekend, we'll have the Jazz Festival back, bigger and better than ever for the 30th year. We've got another couple of events that we're working on. I can't just let them out of the bag yet, so hopefully stay tuned. Council goes after these events because we truly want to make Wangaratta the best it can be for our residents. Events bring people together, they entertain and they inspire us. So to the people of Wangaratta, say get on board, let's get into Wangaratta and have a great positive future. Thank you for my attention. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going into the Deputy Mayor's position. And bear with me on this one, I might be terribly fluent on it because it doesn't happen very often. So I'll call for nominations for Deputy Mayor. So Councillor Clark to nominate Councillor Fuller. Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Fuller, do you accept the nomination? Thank you. Councillor Fitzpatrick to nominate Councillor Curry. Yes, correct. And do you accept Councillor Curry? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Bussell. Thank you, Councillor Bussell. And obviously you accept? Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to have a motion to suspend standing orders to give the councillors a chance to speak on behalf of their nominations if they wish. So can I have a motion, a mover for that motion, please? Councillor Fitzpatrick, the seconder, Councillor Benson. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Councillor Bussell, would you like to talk first in your nomination, please?
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. I assume you're going from in alphabetical order. Mr Mayor and fellow councillors, why do I want to be Deputy Mayor and what do I have to offer? I am very passionate about representing the people of the Southern Ward and the real city of Wangaratta. I love representing the people so much that I'm standing for council next year. I've had experience as a chair of a board in a private school, well trained in governance, media procedures, continue to learn every day. The Deputy Mayor's role is to support the Mayor in many ways. Attend engagements with the Mayor, and when the Mayor can't make it, attend on his behalf. Always make the mythical Mayor look good, and this is not always easy. That's the role of the Deputy Mayor. I'm self-employed and I've been available for the last 3 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and I will continue that while I'm a councillor. That's my commitment. Being a councillor is a team sport, and I've demonstrated that I'm a team player and people first. It's all about the people. I know that being deputy will involve more travel. Don't go to sleep, Mr Fox. But I do on average travel 1,200 kilometres a month, so a few more won't make any difference to the budget, Mr Fox. However, one of my colleagues did call me Robin Hood yesterday, and I will take that as a compliment, that I take money from the city and give it to the poor country people. I have a lot of good to offer. Win, lose or draw, you all know I will be the same bloke tomorrow. One member of the best council in 22 years, the council looks after the people, strengthens communities and gets the job done. That's why
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Thank you, Councillor Curry. Is that coming through the mic? Sorry, thanks, Councillor Bustle. Normally Ben I call you there, Councillor Bustle. Councillor Curry, would you like to talk? No? Good. Okay, Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. It's good to say that again. Thank you for the nomination, Kent. I accept it, and should I be successful, I look forward to the challenge of developing my leadership experience. I look forward to the opportunity to work closely with the Mayor to strive for growth, to work for change, and to advocate for great things for our great community. I also look forward to the opportunities to grow my own personal skill set in a way that ultimately benefits the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for Harry. Go for it.
I'm already ending it. Currently, I've been in the position for 2 years, and maybe that's been too long, maybe it hasn't been. But I think in those 2 years, I've shown that I've led from the front. You know, and to be quite honest, I heard from one of the directors the other day that I've got a pragmatic approach to things. So, and on reflection, which is right. I've certainly brought to this, to the council, the business skills, and I've spent a lot of time focusing on the strategic direction, but most importantly, holding people accountable. Now, this can be done as any councillor. Everything that I've just said, it can be. So at the end of the day, all I want to do is continue to lead from the front and support Dean Rees as the Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Can I have a motion to resume standing orders, please? Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Benton and Councillor Clark, seconding. So, we'll put it to the vote. Firstly, I'll go with to resume standing orders. I just answered the vote. Yep, I'll put that to the vote to resume standing orders. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank God we only do this once a year because we're making it up. Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with Councillor Curry. All those in favour of Councillor Curry to return as Deputy Mayor, please raise their hand. Three. All those in favour of Councillor Fuller to be Deputy Mayor, please raise their hands. Three. Councillor Bustle. One. Okay, thank you, ladies. And what we do is now we drop off Councillor Bustle and we resume and we'll go through that process again now without Councillor Bustle being part. So all those in favour of Councillor Curry to be Deputy Mayor, please raise their hand. 1, 2, 3. And those in favour of Councillor Fuller being Deputy Mayor? 4. Okay. I now announce that Councillor Fuller is Deputy Mayor. Before I go on there, the recommendation that Councillor Fuller makes the determination to establish the position of Deputy Mayor for the Wangaratta Rural City, and that determines the person holding the position of Deputy Mayor is appointed as acting Mayor if there is any vacancy in the office of Mayor or the Mayor is absent, or incapable of acting or refusing to act. And I confirm that Councillor Fuller then, if you're happy with that, will be the Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Everyone, round of applause. For the other two parts in that recommendation, on 12.5 Deputy Mayor that I just read out, can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Clark and Councillor Benton as a seconder. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Councillor Fuller, would you like to say anything, or are you happy to continue on from this? Please continue.
I thank those that have voted for me. They've instilled a trust in me, and I look upon that trust with honour. I'm grateful for this opportunity and energised to get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll continue on with our normal council meeting, which will be item 13. Thank you, Sarah. Corporate Services, our 13.1 quarterly financial report. Oh, sorry, I missed 12.6. I'm good at this one. Sorry, Sarah. 12.6, appointment of portfolios and committees. I'll hand that over to Ashley. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
So I'd like to move that Councillor Harvey Benton to the Infrastructure and Emergency Services portfolio and the Agriculture portfolio. That Councillor Mayor Dean Rees to the planning portfolio, Councillor Mark Curry to the economic development portfolio, Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick to the community wellbeing, family, youth and disability portfolio, Deputy Mayor Dave Fuller to the arts and culture and environment portfolio, Councillor Ken Clark to the sports and recreation portfolio, and Councillor Harry Bustle to the tourism and events portfolio. 2, makes the following committee appointments, which is not on the screen, unfortunately. So A, the holder of infrastructure and emergency services portfolio to the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee, 2, Municipal Fire Management Planning Committee, and 3, Timber Towns representative, which is Councillor Harvey Benton. The holder of the agriculture portfolio to the Agriculture and Agribusiness Advisory Committee, again, Councillor Harvey Benton. C, the holder of the Economic Development portfolio to the Economic Development and Tourism Committee, which is Councillor Mark Curry. There with me. D, the holder of the Tourism Events portfolio to the Economic Development and Tourism Committee, which is Councillor Harry Bustle. Deputy Mayor Dave Fuller to the holder of Arts, Culture and Environment portfolio to the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee and the Sports Recreation Advisory Committee. Councillor Clark to the holder of Sports Recreation portfolio to the Sports and Rec Advisory Committee and Placement Committee. Myself, the holder of the Community Wellbeing, Family, Youth and Disability portfolio to the Youth Council representative. Councillor Curry and Councillor Clark to the Audit Advisory Committee. Councillor Fuller to the Wangaratta Festival of Jazz Incorporated Board. Councillor Benton to the Friends of Lacuta Special Committee. And Councillor Clark to the Municipal Association Victoria representative.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Can I have a mover for item 12.6, please? Councillor Clark. Oh, sorry, Ash moved it. Councillor Clark second. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ash. Item 13.1, thank you, Sarah. The standard part of the council meeting will continue now.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. So to somewhat more mundane topics, 13.1 is the quarterly finance report. So this report is presented to council to provide a progress report on our financial performance for the first quarter of this financial year, and just a minor correction, that should read 2019 to 20. We report for full transparency council expenses for the first quarter. Just a couple of quick highlights. So for the first quarter, we had a surplus of 27.1 million, which was a favourable variance to budget by about 2.6 million. In terms of our income, a few positive variances, so an increase in user fees, that's through some solid usage of council's day-to-day services. 1.4 million in proceeds from the sale of the Murrell Street industrial lots, those that completed within this financial year, and a few variances on grant timings. In terms of favourable variances for expenses, we had nearly 900,000 less spent on materials and equipment. That's principally due to timing, so we expect that to resolve itself during the course of the year. A reduction of depreciation of just over $900,000, and also some benefit from council not having to borrow as much or as early as was originally anticipated. So the recommendation is, firstly, that council notes the quarterly finance report for the period ending 30th of September 2019, and also that council notes the councillor expenses for the same period. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comment from the gallery? Any questions from the gallery on this item? Please, Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian Fox. We've been through this before, of almost getting negative interest rates. We're now borrowing money at 1.5%. the wheel will turn. In living memory, I've seen interest rates at 22%. If our interest rates suddenly jumps to say 16%, or if general interest rates jump to say 16%, have we got protection that our interest rates will stay at the borrowed amount? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Brendan or Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. Brian, thanks for the question. I think we might have had this conversation or a similar version of it a couple of meetings ago. Council has a policy around financing, borrowings, etc. That policy proposes that we maintain a mixture of debt methodologies. So we have some fixed interest rates, which are obviously protected from fluctuations in the rates. We have some at variable rates, which are subject to market forces. We have some at interest only, and we try and keep a diverse portfolio of those so that we take advantage as best possible of the prevailing market at that point in time. So the answer to your question, I guess, is some are protected from increasing rates and some are not. We do obviously have the capacity, as do anybody else, to have a look at the way the market is moving and ask the bank for calculations to pay out loans if we think we're moving in the wrong direction. And generally speaking, we've got plenty of cash capacity to look at those alternatives in good time.
Thank you for this answer.
Thank you. Any further questions from the gallery?
This is question time.
Yeah, no. Not public question time. This is purely on this. I'll just quickly go over. Our council procedure is we'll bring up every item, we'll have questions on every item if someone has a question on that item specifically, and then at the end we will have a public question time where the public will have 2 questions per person, and we look forward to that. So, anybody on council, any council would like to talk on this matter, or we are okay? Okay. I'll put item 13.1 to the vote. Are all those in favour of accepting the recommendation? Oh, sorry, can I have a mover first? Sorry, Councillor Clark, seconder, Councillor Fuller. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Thanks, Sarah. 13.2.
So 13.2 is the quarterly council plan measures report. This contains 2 reports. The first is the What You Will See report, which shows council's performance again in the first quarter of this financial year against the projects that are outlined in our council plan, of which all but one are reported as underway. And the second report is the council plan measures report, which reports specifically on the measures in the council plan. And again, there 21 of the 23 measures are 10% or closer to target. And the recommendation is that council receives the council plan, What You Will See in 2019-20, and the council plan measures report for Q1 of this financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions from the gallery on 13.2 quarterly council plan measures report? Thank you. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Clark, seconder. Councillor Benson. Would any councillor like to talk on the motion? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you, Jamie. 14.1 community grants major progress. Harry, could you please step out of the room? So just to quickly note there, Councillor Bustle is stepping out of the room. He has a conflict of interest. He has a son that plays football in a team where the recommendation here is to award money and to give council the right to vote on without undue influence from Councillor Bustle. That's why we ask him to leave the room. So, thank you. Jamie.
Thank you. So the report presented to Council tonight is in relation to our major grants process that Council goes through annually. So every year we have several grants categories that are open to our community, and this is our largest category that we have available. So this year we received 31 eligible applications, and there was a total funding request of just over $300,000. We had about $100,000 to allocate towards projects. So as always, very competitive round. and there was lots of really strong, exciting projects that we saw come through our community groups. The recommendation before Council tonight is that Council awards a total of $94,270 to fund the following projects, and I will read them out in lieu of us not having a screen. So the successful community grant applications presented to Council tonight are Everton Hall and Sport Complex Committee, the Wangaratta Pony Club, Auskick, combined with Central and College Junior Football Clubs, Glenrowan Preschool, the Wangaratta Urban Landcare Group, the Inner Wheel Club of Woorali, Whitefield Cemetery Committee, and it is Whitefield, not Whitfield, we did have this conversation. Wangaratta Archers, the Ovens Landcare Network, Wangaratta Junior Football Club and the users of Normins Oval, Wangaratta Community Radio Association, the Country Women's Association, Wangaratta District, and that is all. So the recommendation for Council is to endorse these projects and for the funding to be allocated.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions from the gallery? Sorry.
We missed one out. So there is also the $10,000 to fund towards a project that was provided as part of the application process from the Into Our Hands Committee. The recommendation is to endorse the $10,000 allocation, however it doesn't sit specifically within the guidelines of the funding application process. So the recommendation is still to fund it, but to note that it's not a traditional community grants recipient.
Okay. Thanks for that. Are there any questions from the gallery? No? Thank you. Can I have a mover for the community grants, please? Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Fuller seconding. Would any councillor like to talk on the community grants process? Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did sit on this committee, and it's certainly not an easy job to try and allocate 110,000, I think we allocated in this one. When we had applications in excess of 300,000, so there was a lot of work went into it. We were all put to the test, and these are the ones that came out and we believe were worthy of the funding with the money.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, for explaining that. Any other councillor like to talk? Councillor Fuller, would you like to say something?
I'd just like to thank the panel that worked on this project. It is never easy, you haven't done it as well. And congratulate those groups out there, including some of the more fringe sports that we see in there, including Wangaratta Archers. It's another example of how we're spreading around to different various groups and that. And also with the Into Our Hands youth, they have a pitch night next week. Their plan is to give money back to the community, and so it's a great way to see local people coming together to create an opportunity to give more back to our community locally.
Councillor Fitzpatrick, in closing, you want to say anything? You're okay? Great. So I'll put the recommendation to a vote, the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Who? Stuck over the shop to grab a coffee, we won't have to wait. Just before Councillor Bustle comes in, can I just thank the Oxford people and the Oxford Hall Committee for allowing us out here today and providing us with a great venue. It's great to be out here in the rural communities, and we see, as Brian Fox would know in the front row, to get such a large community participation and gathering is fantastic. So thank you very much to the Oxford community and to the Hall community for what you've done tonight. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Bustle. You're okay to continue now with item 14.2? No. Okay. Item 14.2. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. This report is presented to Council tonight in regards to a community infrastructure loan scheme that is available for local governments to apply for. The project that we are proposing Council to submit an application for is actually two projects, one within Apex Park, so the Apex Place-Based project, which is scoped at a total project cost of $1.5 million. The request would be for a loan contribution of $500,000. and also for the Mitchell Avenue Reserve project, which is scoped for just over $1 million project cost, and again a loan contribution request of $500,000. There is also some sport and recreatory funding that has already been allocated. We have been successful in securing for that Mitchell Avenue Reserve project. So these are two really exciting projects for Council. They will develop two very different spaces within Wangaratta that will attract a wide variety of people and target young people and children of all ages. They will be significant attractors into our city from a tourism perspective, but also give families and young people the opportunity to come together in a social and recreational capacity. This loan scheme gives Council the opportunity to apply for funding at a very low interest rate, and it gives us an opportunity to fund infrastructure that we would otherwise need to stage for a future date. So the recommendation for Council tonight is that Council resolves to approve the lodgement of an application for the loan of $1 million under the 2019 Community Infrastructure Loan Scheme for the Regional Place-Based Project and the Mitchell Avenue Reserve Project. And if successful, Council reflects the secured loan funding within the 2020-21 budget against the proposed projects.
Thank you, Jamie. Are there any questions from the gallery? Please, Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian Fox. You choose to spend this amount of money. I wasn't quite sure whether it was 800,000 or 1 million. On the Mitchell Avenue and the Apex Park, which I have no objection to whatsoever, and which will contribute to the experience of bringing up a family in Wangaratta, and at the same time telling me that we, the citizens of Wangaratta, cannot afford to operate 2 swimming pools. Thank you.
Was there a question there, Mr. Fox? Or just a statement?
No. If you want a question on the end, no, it's a statement. Thank you.
Just to let everybody know, this is question time, not statement time. Same thing with our public question time at the end. It is public question time, not public statement time. Please be wary of that, Mr. Fox, in the future. Are there any further questions from the gallery? Yes, please, Malcolm.
Yeah, look, I think Brian Fox raised a very good question. I think it's a question. What priorities does Council place on swimming pools and providing swimming pools? Considering you closed your Runga pool very quickly and shut it down, and people will only people and country people from way out to the other side of town, if they want to go to a pool, they go right across the other side of the town. So shouldn't Council, being we're saying the climate's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter, so shouldn't we have to be looking at more pools?
Jamie, would you like to?
Yeah, so that's in terms of recreation planning and Council's allocation of resources to future recreation facilities. It's quite a big process where we look at a whole range of factors in terms of how young people and families and old people are participating in recreation and sports, the kinds of facilities that as a council we need to invest in and the kind of financial resources that need to be allocated to them. And yes, several years ago a decision was made by council to think about the future of our aquatic facilities, and that has resulted in significant change. So council did invest within the Urunga community and built a splash park there, which is highly utilised, much more so than the aquatic facility that was there at the time. And it's free to use, which makes it much more accessible for people throughout the municipality, not just within that neighbourhood. In terms of investing across different types of recreation facilities, it certainly is the priority of our community that we are able to offer a suite of different facilities that people of all abilities and all age groups can participate in. And we have been told very strongly from our community that informal recreation facilities, such as different types of play spaces, are incredibly important, and important for them to be spread throughout the city and our rural areas. So we're working really hard to do that. The reality is that pools are incredibly expensive to build and to run and to maintain, and that is the reality that councils face, not just us, but all councils, particularly those in the rural and regional areas. And it is a challenge in terms of balancing what the community would like to see and the reality of that kind of cost for developing those pieces of infrastructure.
Thanks, Jamie. Yes, Malcolm?
I particularly you hit a nerve there. With the Urunga pool, right, you developed that splash park. I went down and had a look at it. I don't live in town, right? But that side of town needs somewhere for the children to go to swim and so forth, right? And now you're forcing them to go all the way out. Now that splash park, I went down and had a look at it. It was very dangerous. I wouldn't let Mikey play there because it was concrete. It was terrible. I mean, I personally think the people of that side of town got shafted.
That's a statement.
Thanks, Malcolm. We are investing thousands more dollars to make that splash park. You drive past now, it's being retrofitted to make sure it is more safe, etc. And it goes to the testament of the younger people. That splash park gets more patronage than what the pool ever did by 3, 4, 5, 10-fold. So it goes to show that the splash park works and the pool didn't. So we'll move on. Is there any further questions in relation to this matter? Yes, sir. Councillor. Yeah, that's okay. It's a bit hard to get through.
Yeah, John Griffiths from Raleigh. Just a follow-up question about the building, focusing all the pool complex in the one place. Has at the same time any thought been given to priority bike lanes for families who want to ride all the way across Wangaratta safely to get to this pool complex?
Great, good question. Thanks for the question. Jamie?
And very well timed question, because at our next council meeting we're actually bringing our walking and cycling strategy to council that will go out for community review for a couple of months. So you will see that we have over the last few months put significant resources into asking ourselves that exact question, and indeed asking our community where they see these priority bike and pedestrian paths being developed. We know that there are several gaps in our cycling network, and we are aiming over the next several years to start to fill those gaps so that families can move more easily and safely throughout our community. So you will have the opportunity to see the plan from next council meeting.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Can I have a mover from council? Mover, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Seconder, Councillor Carrick. Is that you? Carrick? Are there any questions? Any statements from council or questions? Council also wants to talk on the motion. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I'm the oldest in the room tonight, but when I was growing up, we had a state savings bank, and they had a credit foncier loan scheme, which this is a credit foncier loan scheme. And I don't believe that this council should be going into a credit foncier loan. That's why the state bank went broke in 1980. Yes, it is, because of the exposure they had to their credit foncier loans. They became part of the Commonwealth. So I'll be opposing the motion because I don't think we should be going into a credit foncier loan scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would any other councillor like to talk on this motion? Well, I'll talk on it just briefly. I was at the launch of this community infrastructure loan scheme in Bendigo with the Treasurer Tim Pallas, and it's here to look after communities and try and get projects done that will take years to fund, or park projects done over those years that will just make, by the time we finish the project, the initial start of the project would be old-fashioned and outdated. So this just gets us the money quicker. It's backed by the government. It's a different situation than I see in the state savings loan situation, and a great thing for Wangaratta if we can get a project approved through the community infrastructure loan scheme. This is a great idea for the Wangaratta community, and to do these extra bits of work over the years in a staged development would end up costing council a lot more compared to what we're paying in interest payments over that time. Thank you. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Like your vote reported against. Councillor Clark's vote reported against the motion. Thank you, Councillor. You were against too. One vote reported was against, and Councillor Fuller against. Thank you. Item 15.1 is infrastructure. I'll hand it over to Alan. Thanks, Alan Clark.
Thank you, Mayor.
So this first report is presented to Council to consider changing the spelling of the road name at Eldorado. It's Trezise Street, currently spelled Tresize. The place naming committee received a letter from the family of Mr. Joseph Trezise, who was the gold and mine inspector back many years ago, and we believe the road was named after that gentleman. So the recommendation tonight is that Council advertises its intention to change the road name from Trezise, Tresize Street Eldorado to Trezise, Zise Street Eldorado to correct the spelling and recognition of Joseph Trezise. Seeks feedback from the community landowners on Trezise Street Eldorado and the referral authorities until 20 December 2019. Reporting the objections received at the February 2020 Council meeting, and if no objections are received, Council resolves to proceed with the road naming change process.
Thank you. Alan, any questions from the gallery on this road change? Thank you. Can I have a motion to put forward? Councillor Clark and Councillor Benson. Would anybody like to talk on the name change? Councillor Clark, no? Mover. Councillor Benson, would you like to talk? No, you're okay. Just the fixing of an anomaly. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thanks, Alan. 15.2, Bar Reserve Oval 2 reconstruction.
So this report is presented to Council to consider awarding a contract for the construction of the HP Bar Reserve Oval number 2. So there's an existing oval there, so we've sometimes said this is a reconstruction, but in reality the existing oval is a paddock that's been mown and had a line and goals put around it. So the original proposal for this project was to construct to the existing size, which is a 3/4 size. After discussion with Council, it's decided to put out to tender for a full-size oval, which would open it up to more user groups, and to consider any additional funding required once the tenders had closed, and they've now closed. The tenders have come in at a price similar to what our estimates were for the full-size oval. That means there's a shortfall in the budget, because the budget was around a 3/4 sized oval. Because it was over budget, we looked at some options to reduce the cost, and we put 3 options to Council tonight. One is to go ahead with the reconstruction of the full-size oval on the full scope. One is to remove the fence from the oval, and the third is to remove the fence and the spoon drain. Though we don't really support the spoon drain removal because it is a fairly integral part of the oval. So the recommendation tonight is, and the recommendation is based on the middle option, so removing the fence but not the spoon drain, that Council approves the allocation of an additional $201,244 to the HP Bar Reserve Oval number 2 reconstruction, and that this additional allocation be identified via savings to other projects as part of a mid-year budget review. Award the contract for the construction to Gordon Gibson nominees, authorises the CEO to sign and seal documents for this contract, and discloses the contract price for this reconstruction project. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan Clark. Alan, could I please put up an alternate motion, please, to continue with that work, but also to include the fencing? Could you please read out what the alternate motion would include, with the inclusion of the fencing, the value there?
So the first point in the recommendation would change to the dollar figures would change. So at the moment it's approved the allocation of an additional $201,244,000. That figure would change to $338,508. The rest of the recommendation would remain the same.
Thank you, Alan. Do I have any questions from the gallery in relation to this bar number 2 oval at item 15.2? No, thank you. I'll put the motion forward, so sorry? I will move it. I, as the Mayor, will move that motion. Is there a second to move the motion to include the fencing? Maybe not. Councillor Clark? Thank you. Would any councillor like to talk on that? Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Councillor Ruiz. I think that this is a bit of pinch a bit from here to pay for, but I think that once we start on this oval, We need to get it finished. It's no good going half cocked and having half an oval with no spoon drain. Will not improve the drainage there if we don't get a spoon drain. And for us to really be considered as one of the leading regional communities for cricket and football, we need the fence around it. That's why I'm supporting your motion.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would anybody else like to talk on the motion? Councillor Bullock?
One consistent thing over the winters since becoming on council has been parents talking about the slosh that is the Bar 1, Bar 2 saga. Being able to do Bar 2 enables us to then work on Bar 1 in the future, so this is a great project to get under our belt in order to actually fix the space that the kids come and play in for Auskick, etc.
No further comments, councillors? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the alternate motion, including the fence. Sorry? All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried.
So I need to declare the contract price then, Mr Mayor, and with that the fence included, the contract price will be $1,044,455.
Thank you, Alan. Item 15.3, Murphy Street Fairy Lights.
So this report's presented to Council to consider awarding some money for the installation of fairy lights on Murphy Street in Wangaratta between the two roundabouts, so between Ford Street and Faithful Street. So back in August, Council installed the fairy lights in the trees in Reed Street. They've been very popular with very positive feedback from the community, and we've looked at how we can do it in Murphy Street, and it would be down the centre median in Murphy Street rather than the either side, and we can have those lights installed for around $100,000. Similar to the lights in Reed Street, we haven't turned them onto the alternate colours yet, but some of the trees would have to be able to be switched to a red and I think green and perhaps blue colours. So this would happen at Christmas time, for instance. So the ones in Reed Street, ones on the corner of Victoria Parade and the laneway there, Maloney's Arcade, they can be switched to those alternate colours, and we'd have a similar option for the lights in Murphy Street at the two roundabouts. They would have that option to go to the alternate colours for things like Christmas time. So the recommendation tonight is the Council approves the allocation of an additional $100,000 exclusive of GST to the installation of fairy lights on Murphy Street, Wangaratta, between Ford Street and Faithful Street from the 2019-20 Capital Works budget Seaworthy Street banners. So what that means is the $100,000 will come out of the street banner project and go into the fairy light project.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any questions from the gallery? Please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to rephrase that comment we made there. Is there any questions from the gallery? There should be an opportunity for somebody to congratulate the council when they're moving something like this. So I'm going to take a bit of licence by saying to you, sir, Mr Mayor, I absolutely agree with this initiative. In the $100,000 will bring money well spent with low maintenance costs, and the new bud lighting power costs will be minimal, and the benefits in lifting the spirits of residents and visitors will be very significant. And I thank you for the initiative.
Thank you, Mr Fox. Appreciate your kind words. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Thank you. Can I have a mover? Councillor Fitzpatrick and a seconder. Councillor Benson. Any comments from councillors? Any councillor like to talk? Councillor Fitzpatrick is the mover, and you'll also get the right of
Well, firstly, I just want to say hallelujah. We've got lights in the street. I think it's fantastic that we're bringing some life to the town. I think it's great how many compliments we have had that we're bringing some life in town and something a bit modern and fresh, which is great. So thank you to our CMT for listening and Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Russell, is that you with your hand up? Or just an itchy arm?
I'd like to say a few words, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
It's a very rare occasion where Mr. Fox and I agree on something. Lifting the spirits of people is really, really important. And I could see in the future lighting up a River Red Gum somewhere out here in the Great Southern Land would look beautiful too, Mr. Mayor. So I think I've had more comments from Reed Street, positive comments, than probably any other project in Wangaratta this year. So thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of it.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Any other comments? Councillor Clark, please. Could you pass the microphone?
I've got a real dilemma with this recommendation. We've already spent 90,000 on lights in Reed Street this financial year. What disturbs me is that 5 weeks before Christmas, we were asked to approve another 100,000 and light up Murphy Street, by once again dipping into other funds. In the 3 years I've been a councillor, I've heard the record that we have no money to put in the street lighting. I know of one elderly resident living on Doyle and Dobbin Street who's been trying to get some lighting, which is non-existent in Dobbin Street for some years, but she is constantly told there was no money for street lights in the budget. Why not? It is too hard to look after some of our residents. I agree that Murphy Street should have the lights, and it should be a budget item for 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Fitzpatrick, would you like to finish your account? In that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Clark, and noted that he's voted against. Thank you, Alan. Development Services, Stephen, 16.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about a proposed amendment, Amendment C76 to the Wangaratta Planning Scheme, and that amendment seeks to implement the Wangaratta Industrial Land Use Strategy. Wangaratta Industrial Land Use Strategy was prepared in 2017 by Council and adopted by Council at the end of 2017. The strategy recommends a range of changes to the planning scheme, and this planning scheme amendment really is the process of making these changes to the planning scheme. As part of the planning scheme amendment process, the amendment documentation was made available for public exhibition and feedback earlier this year, and as a result we received 11 submissions. Those submissions have been considered by council officers, and there's been attempts to amend or make changes to the amendment documentation to try and accommodate those submissions, but we haven't been able to fully accommodate every submission. So this report is presented to council to ask council to consider these submissions and to also consider the next step in the planning scheme amendment process. And the officer recommendation, which is included in the agenda, is that council considers all the submissions and then makes changes, so those changes that we could make to the exhibited amendment documentation, and refers the amendment and submissions to an independent panel for further consideration. The Minister for Planning will be requested, if council makes the decision, will be requested to appoint a panel. Part of the recommendation is that also that council officers should continue to work with submitters to try and resolve some of those issues raised in those submissions before a panel hearing. And the last part of the recommendation is to notify submitters to the amendment of council's decision.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any questions from the gallery? Thank you. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Benson and Councillor Clark. Would any councillor like to talk on this recommendation and motion? No? Thank you. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Stephen, 16.2, 104 Murphy Street, Wangaratta Family History Society.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This item is about the Wangaratta Family History Society, who occupied the first floor of the Visitor Information Centre at 100 to 104 Murphy Street, Wangaratta. The Family History Society provides a valuable service to the community, and they have been located on the first floor of their building for many years. More recently, some safety concerns have been raised about the occupancy of the first floor of that building, and that relates to some structural issues with that building and also some emergency evacuation options for the lack thereof. Due to these safety concerns, it's become necessary for the Family History Society to vacate that space in the short term. Council officers have been discussing these safety concerns with the Family History Society for a little while now, and also the need to vacate that space more recently. And we, as council officers, have been working closely with the Family History Society to try and find a new home for them, including a recent public appeal for assistance in achieving that. Tonight the recommendation, or the officer's recommendation to council, is that council provides written notice to the Wangaratta Family History Society ceasing the license agreement to occupy the first floor of the Visit Information Centre by the end of January next year due to safety concerns. And the second part of the recommendation is that council provides support to help the Wangaratta Family History Society to relocate.
Thank you, Stephen. Is there any questions from the gallery on this item 16.2? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, and probably nobody here was on council at previous times. But this council has a long history of not keeping promises to sporting people, to elderly citizens, when it is after the event. I'm saying that if the History Society needs to move, the council needs to move faster and provide the alternative accommodation or the assistance for the alternative accommodation before they move out. On the physical side of it, if they can't find somewhere to move, what do you want them to do? Put it in a container or the back of a truck? Or what do you want them to do? But the elderly citizens are a prime example. One of the sporting clubs are a prime example. Councillor Clark could probably give you a longer list than I could. But I do urge you to leave this motion lay on the table. Don't vote on it tonight until you can find better accommodation or new accommodation. I thank you for your time, Mr.
Just before you sit down there, Mr. Fox, can I just clarify one thing when you said that this council has a history of not living up to promises? Is this council or previous council?
It was the Wangaratta City Council. You will know that right next to the council offices, the elderly citizens had their own premises. There were big promises made when Big W was built, right, that we were going to find you a standalone site. But ever since, they've been in the back of St. Baxwell. Right? Ken will be able to fill me in about a football club. Was it a football club, Ken, that lost its premises down in the Bar Reserve, and it took years until it was reinstated. So I don't want to persecute anybody, but I think this motion is wrong.
And I thank you for that history from 30 years ago. It was true, I believe, but we've moved on. So are there any other questions from the gallery? Yes, ma'am. Would you like to, you happy standing there?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
If everybody can hear me, my name is Valerie Brennan. I'm the project officer of the Wangaratta Family History Society. And I first of all would like to thank Stephen and his team and several other of the officers from the Rural City Council who have been really forthcoming, supportive, and we understand we have to go. You may have heard or seen the press releases that we had over last week. There's no argument from us about having to move, but we are not going to close down, absolutely not. We may have to relocate somewhere else in the town, but we're not going to do it. I do need to raise one thing that I personally have been bothered by for 9 days. On the Monday, the 11th of November, I emailed to each councillor for pager on who we were, what we were doing, the issue that we currently had. And I think at the bottom I said, if you'd like to come and see what we do, please contact us. But apart from an acknowledgement from Mr. Rees, Councillor Rees, Mayor Rees, I'm sorry, that we did receive an email, we have not heard from any other councillor 9 days down. It really does not do very much for the volunteers who have spent 35 years and probably 200 of them over that time, working on major projects, some of which are for the city. And we feel rather disappointed with public affairs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Valerie. I will state, within Councillor Clark's term as the Mayor, we did do an excursion through the Family History Society up there and were briefed on there on the good work that you do, and we did look at the premises. We weren't as aware as until Stevens explained to us the condition of the premises on why that, and I give you our endeavours, we will strong arm and help you to move, and spoken to Brendan and I will help you move boxes and everything. Right.
If I may, I understand all that, and certainly all of that's been offered and forthcoming, and we appreciate that. We really just felt as if we were a lot of shadows on the rock, because the way we do it. Nobody from council, apart from you, appears to be terribly interested in what we do.
Thanks, Darren. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Can I have a mover, please, of this motion? Councillor Clark, the seconder. Councillor Fuller, Deputy Mayor Fuller, and Councillor would like to speak. Councillor Clark.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to refer Mr. Fox to page 66 of tonight's agenda, which states the risk management, the loss of life, probable, catastrophic, the rating of 19 and vacate the first floor, building structural damage, probable, catastrophic, 19 again, vacate the first floor. That's the first thing. The second thing that I'd like to say in relation to the last speaker is that this is an operational matter. It's not something the council would be involved in until the officers come up with something better. And I deliberately didn't contact anyone for the simple reason that I think it's operational. And until it comes to the council as a recommendation, then we should stay out of it.
Councillor Clark, any other councillor would like to comment on the recommendation and the motion put forward? I'll put the motion to council. All those in favour of the recommendation and the motion proceeding? The motion is carried. Thank you. 18.1 advisory committee charter. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is 18.1, the Audit Advisory Committee Charter. So the Audit Advisory Committee is comprised of councillors and some independent members who provide that assurance to council. And this report is presented to approve a few revisions to the committee charter. There is some detail there about what the nature of those changes are, which are primarily about membership and confidentiality, and a couple of small changes to the terms of reference. So the council adopts the the recommendation is that council adopts the revised Audit Advisory Committee Charter 2019.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions from the gallery? Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Clark. And the seconder, Councillor Curry. Would any councillor like to speak on the motion? No. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you, Brendan. Can you wrap up 19.1?
Thank you, Chair. Item 19.1 is asking Council to receive and note reports of assemblies of councillors and minutes of advisory committees which occurred through October and November of this year.
Are there any questions from the gallery? Thank you. I'll look for a motion. Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. A seconder, Councillor Clark. Would anyone like to talk on the motion? Are all those in favour, please raise their hand. The motion is carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There's no notices of motion and there is no urgent business. This is the time, item 22 on our agenda, which is public question time, and I'll refer to it as 2 questions per person. If you have a question, you please stand, state your name for the record of who you are, and please proceed with your question. If you feel you can get to the front like Mr. Fox did and talk on the microphone, that would be good. If not, please stand in your seat and deliver your question. So thank you. Yes, sir, come forward if you can.
My name's Graham Vincent, and I dare say everyone who's here knows that. Our problem is nothing to do with Wangaratta. It's our Riley's Lane, which is the lane opposite the Oxley Reserve. I built my first house when I was 22, and I'm now 81. I've built a second home 30 years ago. There are now 7 homes, 1 large shed where product comes and goes, some days 50 vehicles pass my house. I've spent $20,000 on some 150 metres of bitumen with the rural city's help, and it's proving very little protection with the amount of dust that comes off that lane. When I built my first home, there was no access to that lane, only on horseback. And there's much the same soil on that road as there was then. And as Arthur would say, we desperately need some decent gravel on it. It's no good grading dirt, which they did at daylight this morning, mind you, whether they knew this was coming up or not. And now it's a massive dust bowl instead of potholes. And so it's of urgency that something decent is done about it, or there's going to be a tragedy. Now, Arthur, what have you got to say?
I'd just like to concur with Graham in the condition of the road. I think Council are aware that it is very much a dust bowl, it has been for a long time, and it just needs a decent surface gravel. I mean, there's no other roads that I've noticed around the Wangaratta area that are gravel that just have such a billowing amount of dust. It's extremely dangerous. And also, there's one other matter that I'd like to raise in relation to that road. Graham tells me that originally, when the road was made, it did drain on the south side from where Chris Colcanus lives down as far as the dip in the road just before his place. But the graders over the years have just graded stuff into the drains, and the drain no longer works. So that really needs to be drained. There's a big hole up along that road that just fills with water.
Hopefully
it does. Thank you, Graham and Arthur. Do you mind if I hand it over to Director Clark to give some answers and maybe a solution?
Thanks, Graham and Mark. I think I came out to your place, Graham, when I first arrived at Council talking about this very problem. But going back then, which was 5.5, 6 years ago, there was a lot of roads that had pretty poor quality gravel on them, and some a number of others in that vicinity that we received a very significant number of complaints about. We changed at that point the type of gravel going on the roads and stopped using some of the local pits that have a lot of mudstone in the material and thus creating this really fine talcum powder. It means it costs us more in cartage, but we're getting better quality gravel on the road. At that time, there's $400,000 a year being spent on gravel resheeting, none on table drains and none on rural drainage.
And none on Riley's Lane.
Yeah, none on Riley's Lane. So that was doubled by the administrators, and that amount of $400,000, if you include those three things, is now up to over $2 million, and this council has resolved to increase the resheeting budget 10% every year. So a lot more money is being spent on the unsealed roads now. I'm not sure where Riley's Lane sits on our resheet program, but I will have a look first thing in the morning and see where it sits and what the priority there is. But there has been a significant effort by council to improve those really poor quality roads, and I understand the dust situation on the road.
Just want to say, when I paid to have that bitumen piece in front of my house, I have to be honest and say I paid $20,000 and then the rural city gave me $10,000 back and told me I must never do anything to maintain it. It was their responsibility. Well, now it's got holes in the bitumen, etc. So if it's their responsibility, I hope they pass that up too.
I'll have a look at this one.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a roving microphone too. Do you want to speak microphone or non-microphone? Malcolm? You'll come up. Yeah. Microphone. Yeah. Thanks. No, stand up, please. Stand up.
Malcolm, I hope I don't bore you with another road issue, but I've got a road that adjoins 7 properties. It runs off the Snow Road, runs right through to what they call a 3-chain road from Oxley through to Greeter. It's a through road. It fronts 7 properties. Prior to the Oxley Shire Council, they maintained it fantastic. This is called Taggart's Lane, what I'm referring to. They maintained it, the Oxley Shire did. The amalgamation, the rural city of Wangaratta maintained it up until 2006. We were, in a year like this year, we had a drought and we had fighting bushfires. And apparently they advertised it in some newspaper, if you wanted your road put on the road register, you had to register it. They didn't send out letters to adjoining landowners to tell them that if you don't register this road, it will no longer be maintained. So this road has no longer been maintained, it hasn't been graded, nothing has been spent on it, no coal has been put on it, or anything. I've broken the law twice. I've paid a contractor to grade a section of this road. And it's frustrating because as a full-time farmer, we have to progress. Our machinery's got bigger, so now when I go down there, I cannot access these back lanes to go because the overhanging branches are hanging down too far. And it was frustrating the other day. I drove one of my smaller tractors down there and I'm able to drive it down this roadway, and the grader was grading all the other roads around the place, and he'd gone down Taggart's Lane, he'd driven around these low branches, he couldn't drive along the road, he'd driven around these low branches, and there's a culvert down in the middle of this Taggart's Lane, which is not even 8 foot wide. It's broken off both ends. It's been patched up by a bit of tin about probably 30 years ago, 25 years ago. So my question is, I would like Taggart's Lane be reinstated on the road register, and it's ironic that I did ring council about a week ago about these low-hanging branches, and I asked one of the workers that was on the water cart when they were grading these other lanes, I asked him, could they prune these trees? And he said, no, look, no good talking to me, I won't take any messages back to council, you'll have to ring council. So I rang council and they did send an arborist out, and he is going to lop these low-hanging branches, and I was then complaining about the road, condition of the road. So on a one-off situation, they've actually graded part of the road yesterday, for the first time in since 2006, which is 14 years. So, and my property, actually, the property that I'm talking about, it fronts the snow road, so therefore the snow road won't allow me, the big roads won't allow me any access of the snow road to my property. They tell me that I'll have to access it off Taggart's Lane. So that's the scenario that I'm in. So,
Great. Thanks, Malcolm. So what, obviously we put that question under advisement for Alan. I'll get on to give a couple of quick answers now, and then hopefully whatever that process may be from there. So Alan, can I get you a short response?
One last thing. When you stop maintaining that road in 206, I didn't receive a reduction in my rates. They've actually tripled my rates. And as far as I can see where my rates are being spent, because I joined the snow road, which is the big roads, all I can see my rates are being spent on functions down by the river and so forth, which I totally get dejected because I'm maintaining my own road, my own access.
Thanks. Thank you, Malcolm.
Malcolm, we obviously spoke before, and I've made a note to have a look at this in the morning. I don't know where Taggart's Lane sits on the road registry, but we obviously have a hierarchy of roads where higher use roads get maintained more, and it drops right down to fire access tracks, which generally get some maintenance this time of year based on the advice of the fire inspector. I'm not sure where Taggart sits, so I'll have a look in the morning and see what we can do about it.
The thing is, a lot more people are using this road. They're using it driving through. We've got people coming out from Wangaratta driving along the road, running their dogs along there, and you know we've progressed now from the horse and cart days to small tractors, and we've got big equipment. And I have to drive down this. I just drive simply down the Mooryu Whitfield Road, hit the new roundabout, go around down the snow road, and I'm holding up a lot of people. I've nearly had an accident. Someone's nearly ran into another car coming on board, overtaking me. I just can't understand it. What I'm paying rates for, I might as well have my farm on the moon. And I rang this by Pat McNamara through the ABC radio, and he said council are responsible for the road and to go and see the ombudsman.
Well, let's start by seeing council first, and we've just had this question tonight, so we'll look into it further and we'll report directly back to you and see where it is and see what the history of the road was around the 2005, 2006 area, which you mentioned to me previously. In relation to that.
I've got a portfolio an inch thick.
Right,
Engineers, councillors, administrators.
Okay. Thanks, Malcolm. Good question. Are there any other questions? Yes. Yeah. Sorry. There's a microphone coming over the back.
Hold it nice and close to the please.
My name is Janet Heath. I'm Secretary of the Office of Employment, and thank you for coming here tonight. I'm responding further to the question that Val, or the statements that Val made before about she'd sent an email. Councillor Clark explained why he ignored it. I'm wondering if there's an actual council policy on when and do councillors and the council officers always respond to emails and phone calls? And the question is there a policy of how many days you're expected to wait before you get an answer to questions by email or phone?
Thank you. It's a good question, and to my knowledge, there is no policy on certain requests to councillors. It's the councillor's diligence to get back to you. I will just say myself, I probably get 100 odd emails every day, and I do endeavour to get through most of them, and some do miss and get through the holes there somehow. In relation to my fellow councillors, it is their responsibility if you've directly gotten on to them and would like a reply from them to ask that question to make sure that they do reply. So I can't answer for my fellow councillors. Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick.
I suppose from my point of view, when it is addressed to all of us councillors, Dee is the mayor and the chair, and he usually sends out a generic email. If we individually get it addressed just to us, then yes. With the policy, if there was one, I'd be a bit hesitant on that at times, because I can speak from experience. I have had phone calls of no caller IDs of sexual harassment and all sorts of things, so I do not think that I would feel comfortable responding to all calls, or if I did receive messages like that and I know who it's from. So if there was something, it would have to have a few key points, but that's just from my point of view. Thank you.
It can also be a little bit of a situation if 7 different councillors said 7 different opinions or thoughts that can sometimes work against it. Sometimes these emails come in and councillors then every Monday night we have a briefing session, anything that's specifically urgent we discuss. But I agree, just a note as well as just to say yes, we're in receipt of your email would certainly suffice to say that you have read the information. So thank you.
And council officers to the employees, not just the councillors. Is there a policy on that?
Sorry, Sarah, thank you.
Yes, we have a target of responding to any community requests within 10 days. At the moment, we don't think that's good enough. At the moment, I think 14 days actually, but we're tracking between 4 to 6 days, and we report that to the councillors on a monthly basis.
Jenny Ashby from Woodlands. Just a little preamble. So council clearly has moved its community planning to now what you're calling rural placemaking. And I was reading the council document and it talks about placemaking being about community organising and coming together to improve common places. So the councillors would be aware that at the last council meeting at Myree, the question of sealing the Benalla Whitfield Road came up. So my question to you today is, given that it's possibly $6 million to seal that 7 kilometres, my question is, can the sealing of the Benalla Whitfield Road be a strategic project for the King Valley and Whitlands, like other projects listed in the Rural Placemaking Project document?
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Just a couple of follow-ups on that council meeting out at Myree there last month. That you asked for us to act on certain things. I will state that we have met with the Shadow Minister, Roma Britnell, with Tim McCurdy, and Roma is the Shadow Minister for Rural Roads and Freight, and we have run this past her. Obviously she's not in power as isn't Tim McCurdy, but it's a high priority for her then that come election again and they got into power. We've also requested a meeting with Jacqueline Simons' office. Now that can take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to get a meeting date set up there, and she is the Regional Development Victoria Minister for RDB, so we are just waiting on that time. We were supposed to catch her for a short time, Brendan and myself, this morning in Melbourne, but she had a sick child and couldn't make that meeting. We'll also state that we have also put in a request to meet with Jarla Pulford, who is the Minister for Roads at the present time, to be able to put forward our case in relation to this major link road. So we are working there, as well as it being as a high priority on our list. I might throw it over to Alan Clark in relation to just what we discussed there and see if it can be further on the strategic list there moving forward.
Thanks, Jenny. So this road does sit on other strategic lists. I personally don't think it fits under the rural placemaking purpose, and we deliberately have not included projects that should be occurring by other means in the rural placemaking priority list. Jamie might have to help me out, but we're going back out to communities shortly to revisit those priorities for the future. But generally speaking, we're not including those very significant major road drainage type projects on that program. But we do include it on other strategic programs. We know it's our only link road that's not sealed. We know it's a significant mover of freight and access into that rural community, so it sits on those priorities. But we can have a look at where it sits rural placemaking.
Thank you for that. And the reason why I raised that was I think the King Valley project was around tourism, and so there was a connection given that the discussions around that being another tourist access road to the King Valley. Thank you, Mayor, for updating me on your advocacy and lobbying efforts. It was disappointing reading that article that was reporting on the opposition spokesperson was fairly negative, I think, in the Wangaratta Chronicle. I had done a little bit of research, and the Premier Dan Andrews had put out a press release about additional funds for roads, which I followed up by ringing the press officer, but clearly that relates to Vic roads, and this is Council Road. But certainly when I made that inquiry, the suggestion was that Jacqueline Symes would be an appropriate person, so I'm really pleased, and the Roads Minister, that you're following up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Sir, do you have any?
Yes. My name is Craig Thorpe. I represent the Moore Youth Tennis Club, and many of the committee members from the Moore Youth Tennis Club are here tonight. Congratulations to the Mayor and to the Deputy Mayor on the election and re-election. Our question is, firstly, I'll pose this question in two parts. Firstly, I'll give you the question, I'll give you the background. Firstly, the question is, when will the works on the Moore Youth Tennis Club courts, two courts there, be finished? And the background to it is that this saga began probably a decade ago with a substantial amount of fundraising going on from the club, and we've raised over $130,000. Requires a lot of man hours to be able to do that. Obviously, a significant contribution from the council to be able to allow for that. Unfortunately, when the works were completed in 2012, there was a lack of governance on terms of the tender process and also the standard of the works. Almost immediately, those courts was clear that there was substandard work. The work, there's been multiple reports, multiple council involvement from 2012 onwards. The foundations of the courts are unsuitable, and that's the root cause of the problem. There's been superficial works conducted, grinding it back, patching it up. There's now to a position where the courts now are becoming unplayable, and within sort of 1 to 2 years, we would think that they'll propose, so they will put a significant health and safety risk for people to play on those courts. So we would believe that this should be a high priority for council. After all of those 7,000 new residences, some of them want to play tennis, and perhaps the Moore Youth Tennis courts would be a suitable place for that. So we would think that this should be in the 2020-21 works, and we would like to see it occur as of the 1st of July 2020. Thanks very much.
Craig, just before Brendan go on, can I just say thank you, Craig, for your question on notice. Craig has written this question to Council through the week, of which I was going to read out, but I don't have to. Thanks, Craig, for explaining it. And Craig gave us a bit of history in relation to his forthcoming questions, so we do appreciate those questions when they're quite valuable situations with the Moore Youth Tennis Court. So thanks very much for that. We appreciate it, Council, with that further notice to be able to help answer questions on the night. Thank you. Brendan.
Thanks, Craig. I've been out to the courts a couple of times, as has Alan and various other people on our staff, so we're certainly well aware of the condition of the courts and the background to that. Your ward councillor has also been pretty active, continuing to raise this amongst his colleagues as a priority. The commitment I made when I met with representatives out there was that we would continue to watch the condition of those courts. We would continue to do what you described, I think, as basic maintenance, like grinding and crack patching and so forth, in an endeavour to keep them playable until such time that we had the opportunity to see how much more movement and how much further damage might come to the surface as a result of some of the damage to the subgrade that you referred to. That's still the case. If you're of the view that currently more of that kind of minor rectification work needs to be done to make it safe and playable, then we can certainly arrange that as a priority. We are working through preparations for next year's budget now. When it comes to tennis courts, we will look at the range of courts right across the municipality, and we'll do what we can to address, the ones that we think are in the worst condition through to the better condition in that order of priority. I can't tell you tonight where Moyu sits on the range of sort of good to bad, but we're certainly aware of the condition and the issues that are being created by the condition.
Can I have a follow-up question there?
Yeah, please.
Disappointing to know that you don't understand where Moyu sits on good to bad. There's been numerous reports submitted, 2 of them by a subcontractor to Tennis Victoria about the statement of those. People within the council, other than yourself, have given us different views on where they currently sit, and that the subgrade does need to be fixed, and the council is in fact wasting money just grinding them off and patching them up again. So that's a little bit disappointing to hear that. So I guess my question is can you please have a look at those reports, go through them again, speak to the other guys in the council that have been out, and see if we can get a consolidated answer, and then get that back to the club.
If I could, through the chair, just clarify what I actually meant by that, Craig. I've certainly seen the reports that 2MH Consulting have done.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with their work and have already detailed their reports. So I'm very aware of the condition of your courts. What the point I was making was I can't tell you whether you're number 2 or number 15 or number 18 in terms of the broad range of various courts in a range of different conditions across the municipality. But what I am saying is we are very aware of the condition of your courts. We just need to understand where that sits against other needs in other townships. If we do need to do further works in the meantime, then we're happy to look at that. I think we all recognise that that's essentially just temporary fixes. The permanent solution out there would be a full reconstruction. I think we all know that. And of course, it's a very expensive exercise, and we need to make sure that we're dealing with the worst courts first, so that it's equitable for people right across the municipality.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Just a quick one. Jamie, any funding streams that you know of at the moment under the Sport and Rec portfolio they're coming forward that could help for the Moyne Tennis Club to help procure with council's help?
Yeah, so there's often funding that comes available through Sport and Rec Victoria or Tennis Victoria or Tennis Australia for funding specifically of tennis facilities. At the moment there's none that have been released, but there are some future funding rounds that may be able to fit. Again, it still ties back to the point Brendan makes around the hierarchy of priority projects and us as an organisation looking at the condition of facilities across the entire municipality and understanding that.
Thank you, Craig. Yes, Stars. Sorry, ma'am, I'll just get this gentleman here again quickly for your second question, sir, and then straight back to you.
Yes, Arthur Parker again. Many of us are concerned about the Oxley Meadow Creek Road as it goes down to the Oxley Reserve. People are probably aware of that section. That's the sealed section of that road. The first section from the town has been widened and it's good. But once you go about 1k down, it's very narrow and the edges are very sharp and broken away. I'm just wondering if it can at least be, for the time being, be repaired and maintained in a safer state. And if that can go on the list to be widened at some stage, because the amount of traffic on that road is extremely large these days with the Oxley Reserve. Having lots of horse events down there, there's lots of floats going down there, lots of caravans there that are staying there, there's the dump point down there. There's just an enormous amount of traffic going down the Oxley Reserve, and I'll just commit that to you guys to see what you can do about it.
Thanks, Arthur. Just a quick reply, Alan.
Yes, that project is well known, it is scoped up, so we do have estimates and it will compete for dollars in next year's budget.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're okay? Any further questions from the gallery? Yes, sir. Sorry, Bruce, I'll get this gentleman and then I'll go to Bruce after that. Okay.
Graham Clough, Office of Resident. In the last 12 months, council's made one road bitumised in Oxley, Johnson Street. They've also widened the reserve road, as Arthur mentioned. Is council, and they also had a street sweeper go down Johnson Street a number of weeks ago. Is council aware that the actual aggregate is lifting out of the bitumen on that street, and it's considerable, and also the corner of McCartney and the Reserve Road was broken up when council did that section, and it's not been repaired. On the other corner, at Eli Street and McCartney Street, we have 2 school buses coming in that corner every day. It's been broken for years, and we need something to go about it.
Thanks, Brian.
I'm personally not aware of the state of the seal, but I'll get it checked into and we'll have a look at it. So, certainly a seal of that age shouldn't be stripping, and we'll have a look and try and work out why. We'll obviously look at it when we're at it.
Thanks for the question, Bruce.
I'm aware of just want to support more you. I'm aware of their project from day one. Council managed it. Similar to the splash park, paid to get that done, and I'm aware that's been already done because it was substandard. So that's been given a priority. Why wouldn't more you be given a priority when it was funded by Netball Victoria? And by what I'm told, it's never been up to standard. So why are they got to wait for priorities?
Thanks, Bruce.
It's a reasonable question, Bruce. I guess, as in all these things, we look at what's occurring with whatever the facility might be, splash park, tennis court, whatever. We have to make an assessment about what the level of risk is that any issues are presenting to us. In the case of the splash park, there were some things that were occurring with the way that was built that were concerning to us and needed to be immediately addressed. Unlike the tennis courts, there weren't really sort of minor rectification works that could be done to bring them to a standard that we felt was reasonable. So we've chosen to do a much more thorough reconstruction of that, which, as I said earlier, is ultimately what Moyu also needs. But in that case, our view is we can do minor rectification works there to keep it in a safer condition there. They're just different levels of risk and therefore need different levels of consideration and treatment at any given time. If we had unlimited amounts of money, we would obviously do everything the minute they became apparent to us, but we don't.
Just a follow-up question.
Yep.
So we've got two projects that were substandard. What's management of council got to make sure these contractors do the job, and if we don't do it right, get it fixed?
Yep. Again, good question. I'd point out that last year we completed about $36 million worth of work, and in previous years, many millions of dollars on previous projects. So our experience with having issues with projects is relatively minor. We have issues with a very small number of projects. We would rather have issues with no projects, obviously, but the first thing I'd say is I think we do very well in terms of getting projects successfully completed. The splash park was a little bit different. It was done as what's called a design and construction project. The more typical arrangement would be that we design something and then people tended to build it to that standard. In this case, this was done as a design and construct. What's become apparent over the time since it's been open is that there were some issues with that design, and they were then starting to show out as issues with the construction itself, and we had to take the action to address it. We will certainly be, without saying too much, we will certainly be examining what capacity we have to go back to the company that did that work and recover that.
Thanks, Bruce. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, Phil Harkin, Moyu Action Group. Going to what you were saying with the tennis courts, they would have had to been signed off and been classed as being really above standard, and yet at no stage has there ever been. Is there anyone that has been held accountable for the council actually signing them off?
Phil, I'd rather not get into a kind of slanging match about who did what. We know, I think the issues are pretty well known. We know there's some damage that was done to the subgrade prior to the project. We know there were some issues with hydraulic hoses and things that broke during construction. So there's a range of things that have contributed to this issue, and we have the mess that we have left. I just restate our undertaking is that we'll do whatever work we need to do on a minor kind of basis to keep them safe and playable. We know that they will need reconstruction at some point in time. It's just a question of when they become the number one priority for reconstruction. I don't want to get into a finger pointing thing about who caused what and who should have done what and who's been blamed for various things. I don't think that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's not my point. My point is, have you got the structure now in place so things like this don't happen again? Do you actually do finish it off properly?
We had a pretty comprehensive program go to council to, in a range of ways, to improve the level and amount of CapEx work completion. Our CapEx completion going back a few years in terms of the percentage of projects that got finished in any year was much lower than we would like it to be. So we put a pretty comprehensive package of stuff up to the council, which included a significant increase in the resources for both project managers and administrative support for project managers. So we now have a much bigger complement of people working in that space, which obviously gives us much greater capacity to watch projects much more closely as they're constructed. So the answer is yes, there's a range of things that have been done to improve that, and we'll continue to look for opportunities to improve that going forward.
Thank you. Any further questions from the gallery? Mr. Fox, please.
Hey, thank you again, Mr. Mayor. There are times when you think I sort of wander off a bit, and you ask me, do I have a question? Well, I've written my questions down on the bottom of the page, so you understand perfectly what I'm about, and I'm about to be critical. Mr. Mayor, I wish to refer to a previous meeting of this council when I strongly objected to council reappointing the YMCA as contractor for the Swan Street pool for a further 2 years. I based this on their prior performance. I would like to draw your attention to the only paid advertisements that I am able to find that the Swan Street swimming pool is to open on Saturday. I have seen 2 advertisements in the council advert on the last 2 Fridays. I see a sign tied to the fence facing Sisley Avenue, and I see an editorial in Monday's Chronicle, which incidentally was very, very good. To my knowledge, that is the sum total of the promotion. So it would seem that if you do not read the Chronicle on Fridays, or this Monday, or this Monday's edition, or drive along Sisley Avenue, you have no idea that the pool is to open on Saturday. From a community information point of view, the above efforts seem to be designed to have minimal patronage so as to support councils and the YMCA's case for closure. My 2 questions, sir, am I wrong? My second question is, sir, do you and your council continue to support the decision of council to grant YMCA the 2 years of unadvertised extension? I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. And in answer to a couple of your situations, firstly we've got Steve Kelly here from the Wangaratta Chronicle. I'm sure Steve will put something in the paper for this week to state that it's opening this week, Steve. The other situation is that the YMCA is currently contracted until the 30th of June of next year, and of course we will be considering, council, all our options moving forward in relation to the operation and management of our sporting facility down there at the Bar Reserve and the introduction of our new swimming pool next year. So that's all I'd like to say in relation to the YMCA. In support of them moving forward, the support, they have their contract, and in support of them continuing their contract at least until the end of their year at the 30th of June next year, and then all options will be considered from there. So hopefully some advertising and people do get around word of mouth. I'll make sure that Councillor Fitzpatrick puts on her Facebook site so that's wide and used, and also on the council Facebook site for all the younger people to know that the pool is open come this weekend. so further marketing, but as far as the council contract goes, we've put the YMCA and supported it until the 30th of June, and we'll see where we head from there.
So neither you or I wanted to get into a debate about this, but these people, sir, and I'm not ashamed to say, are incompetent. The horse has already bolted. There should have been a free day on Saturday, or a half day, or a discount day, or free hamburgers, or something. There should have been a celebration. I mean, if there's a birthday party in Swan Street, I know where it is. There's 5 balloons started at the gate. Last year, sir, when they opened the pool, they put up a flag that I prompted them to get 5 years ago with a great big rip in it. And when I questioned it, they said, they've got a new one on order. Well, I'm suggesting to you they only ordered it after I wrote to them.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Thank you. The question has been asked and answered, and I appreciate your reply there that you're anti the YMCA, and it's duly noted. It will be noted on our site, obviously, because this is open to the public.
Well, I repeat my question, sir. Have a look at the contract and see if the contract allows these people to not promote the pool. Surely there's something in the contract that says you will manage it in a commercial manner. Well, sir, they're not.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. We'll look at that and go from there. Thank you, Jamie. You'll do that. Tomorrow, but thank you for that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no further questions, I would like to end off by staying on a number of a situation here that the rural city of Wangaratta population is growing. Investment in infrastructure is required to support the growth and to maintain and improve the livability across our region. Our infrastructure priorities must be targeted to reduce disadvantage and build on our local economic strengths and specialised local industries and business. We will be working on this, Councillor Fuller. There is a further potential to develop regional business and industry through our coordinated effort, which we strive to do through all forms of government and its subsidiaries to get the strong economic outcomes for our community. Headed by sustaining existing economies, supporting our skills, and develop training to grow the local workforce and retain them here in our great city, the rural city of Wangaratta. We're here to improve transport, and that's connectivity transport from Wangaratta to Melbourne to give us that best opportunity of keeping our people. And through the great work of one of our fantastic directors here, Sarah, who is across here, I would like to thank her for her good hard work with our strong financial performance and our innovation. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to close off on the meeting that we're here to work for Wangaratta. We're a progressive council, led over the last 12 months by myself and by Councillor Curry, and now further on to Councillor Fuller, Councillor Clark in the previous with his mayor, Councillor Curry for 1 year, and Councillor Benton. We're all here to work for your community. I'm Dean Rees and I'm your mayor. So good night, and thank you again to the Oxford community and the Oxford. Thank you very much.